to the Board Game Community Show. I'm your host, Riley Stark. Join me as I get to know folks in this community. They could be designers or streamers, podcasters, YouTubers, publishers, whatever. Really anything with an "er" at the end of its title is welcome here on the Board Game Community Show. Welcome back to the Board Game Community Show. Today I've got Chris Anderson from the Board Game Workshop podcast. How you doing?
I am doing great. How are you?
I'm good. I'm really excited to have you on because, as I was telling you before we started, you were the first board game podcast that I listened to, and you provided me with hours of entertainment while working.
Happy to help.
And I think, I was Dustin Dowdle. He's the one that put me onto your show. And he's the one that kind of got me into the board game community because I didn't know there was this world of designers. That's weird. There's just people who design games.
No, it's a whole world once you fall into it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. You can't get out. This is quicksand.
I've thought about getting. I'm like, I'd have so much free time if I just stopped this, but I can't do that.
Yeah, it's too.
I'll just stop something else, like quit my job or stop sleeping.
Yeah, there's definitely better sacrifices to be made. You can live, I think I've said this before, you can live in a cardboard house with all of your board game boxes.
Exactly. I've got enough to make at least one room.
Yeah, exactly. It's enough.
And if they're UV coated, then they're kind of waterproof. It's good enough.
Ooh, yeah, good point. So what got you into board gaming?
Board gaming. Okay, so here's my story. As a child, I played, regular board games, Monopoly, Scrabble. Risk was a big favorite. We got Hero Quest when I was pretty young. And the farming game, which is a rather obscure game not a lot of people know about. But
is it just called the farming game?
It's called the farming game. The game designed on the seat of a tractor. So it's... I haven't played it in decades. And I would guess that it is not very good based on modern standards. But it's got the Monopoly board layout, but you're a farmer. And the difference is you have different areas in the middle of the board that are your farm, which doesn't really matter. It could just be a tableau in front of you. But you get little color form stickers that are different, what do you call it? Things you plant. Crops. That's what they're called.
You got it.
You can get fruit or wheat or another one, or cows. Cows count as a crop because it's just easier. But you collect them, and then you go around the board, and different parts of the board are different seasons for harvests. So, like, cows are pretty good money. Fruit's the highest value, but you only harvest it once a year. Wheat is, really cheap, but you harvest it, 4 times a year. And you go around, and you pay money, and you have to get little options to buy a tractor. And if you own a tractor and your other player goes to harvest wheat, they give you some money. And it's terribly complicated and kind of boring. But we played it all the time. We really enjoyed it for some reason. We also enjoyed Monopoly all the time.
Yeah, it's before you expand your horizons.
But way too much in the farming game for this story. I forgot I was telling the story. Anyway.
Sorry.
So yeah, that was when I was a kid. And then we played, tons of mass market games, like those ones you squish things with Play-Doh and all sorts of stuff. Mousetrap, although it never worked for us. So yeah, I played tons of stuff. I got into Magic pretty early. I think 96 I started playing Magic. Then that's pretty much the only thing I played for a while. Then I played some party games once I was in college. Big fan of Pictionary, things like that. And then after college, I played Magic a lot. Went to a local shop, met some friends there. And then those friends also played board games. So sometimes we play Race for the Galaxy. So I was vaguely aware of these games just on the side of Magic. I wasn't aware there was a whole hobby or the amount of games that existed at the time. So this is early 2000s. I graduated college in 2005. So 2006, 2007, I'm starting to be vaguely aware. Actually, I played a German version of Carcassonne when I was in college, but I was not aware that I was playing the first release of Carcassonne and what that means now. It was just, oh, here's a cool game about placing tiles that I don't know how to read the directions.
Wow.
So later on, now I'm like, oh wow, I played the first. Like a friend of mine had brought it back from a trip to Germany. I was like, oh cool, a neat game. I did not realize what that meant at the time. So that was interesting.
Yeah, that is.
And then the thing that really shifted me into the hobby and designing was one of my Magic friends invited me over for a board game. I was like, sure, sounds good. And we played Eclipse. I was just so enamored with that game. It's such a massive game, but so elegantly done. Just the systems they have for tracking stuff. I mean, it's still a massive game, and it's not short by any means. But that was just the thing that kind of made it click. I was like, wow, you can do so much with board games. And I was like, I could probably design a board game. I made a very bad board game. It was like a mixture of Risk, but much slower.
Oh, no.
So, it was fun. It got me started. But then that got me looking online. I found the Game Crafter because cutting out hexagons is terrible. So why not buy them? And then I got on Twitter and found all that and started listening to board game podcasts. And here I am years later doing design contests and designing and podcasting and listening to tons and tons of podcasts myself.
That is awesome.
It's a fun journey.
How did you get into the podcasting part? Just to jump right into that, I guess.
So before I got into board games, I was listening to iTunes U a lot, which if you're not familiar, iTunes U, which is discontinued now, no longer supported, which is really sad, was a system iTunes had that basically colleges would use mostly, high schools also, but they would just record their lectures and also have other stuff, and they could use it for class. But you didn't have to belong to the school, and you could just subscribe to it and listen to all the lectures for a class. So I was listening to tons of lectures. Before I got into podcasts, I would just listen to like an entire year's worth of astronomy lectures, some philosophy, lots of economic stuff. So then I was like, oh, podcasts are a thing, right? Maybe there's some about board games. So I did a search for board game podcast, and this is probably 2014. So there were a lot less than there are today. The first one I found was on board games, which it's interesting that was one of the first ones I found because that is one of the first board game podcasts. He started his podcast in 2005, and he started it because there were not board game podcasts around. There were some like web-hosted audio board game shows, but they weren't set up as podcasts. So he started it in his early episodes, which I listened to his whole backlog, which was easy back then when I only listened to the one podcast. But he talks about he wanted other people to do it. It's like, it's really easy. I have like a super cheap microphone. I just do this thing and record it and post it. So that didn't get me into podcasting then, but I think it planted the seed. They're like, it is easy. And I listened to tons and tons of podcasts and more. And then one summer, so I think I started the podcast in 2016 or 17, one of those. But I talked about it the summer before. I was going to make a YouTube channel because my background is in video production. So I have access to lots of equipment. I know how to do things, but video is a ton of work. So I ended up not doing a video, and I'll just do audio. That's easier. And then I started the podcast.
And the rest is history.
It is indeed.
That is awesome. I think I had originally started doing a YouTube channel as well, thinking I was going to do that, not having really any resources. And I realized, man, I need to edit myself. I cannot do a YouTube channel. There's no way.
I mean, I think in some ways that's easier. Not like all the stuff I know about video, I can make a bad video very easily. Lots of people can.
Yeah.
But I know that it's bad, and I know I can do better, so I feel bad about it. And I don't think there's anything wrong with doing quote-unquote bad video. Like sometimes being faster and getting your stuff out there and being more natural is a benefit. But I know that I could do the lighting better. I could redo that. I could get the sound better. So it feels worse to me knowing that I could do it better. But I don't have the time, or I just don't put in the effort to do it.
Yeah, I totally get that. It's very time consuming. I don't know how
super time consuming.
I don't know. Do you know which takes longer, editing a podcast or editing a video?
It depends on your goal. I think so. Now I've done video editing for a long time. I think the thing that is tied to how long it takes to edit the most is not whether you're doing something long or short or video or audio. It is the difference between what you're starting with and what you're ending with. So I do a lot of like live events. So I record a 1-hour event, which gives me an hour and 5 minutes of video. I cut off 5 minutes and I'm done. That takes like a half hour. But if you record, 6 months for a documentary and you want to turn it into an hour, that will take years. So it's that difference is how much effort. I actually probably take more time editing my podcasts because video, you can see it. So I think I can go a little faster and just years of experience. But with audio, it's like, oh, here's a little tick here. I got to trim that down. Here's a little tick here. I got to trim that down. I said 11 times, so I'll take that out.
I don't know what you're talking about there. No way that happens. I've been letting some of those slide, more and more of those slide, because it's such a casual conversation that I think people have been a little more forgiving about it.
That's one change. I think that's probably the thing that slows me down from recording more episodes is how long it takes to edit. Like I've had episodes recorded and then sitting for over a month because I just can't get around to the editing. So I've been trying to be a little like I edit very tightly, but I'm like, just let it go. A space, that's fine. So I'm trying to do that more just to like get through it. But every time I listen, I hear it. I'm like, well, I could just trim that one. I could just trim that one. Before you know, it's 3 days later and I haven't posted my episode.
I'm glad we are very similar, but I put every Friday, this has to come out. So at a certain point, once it's Thursday and it's 8:00 at night, I'm like, all right, stuff has got to slide.
So I did have that back before 2020. I had a bi-weekly release schedule.
Yeah.
Every other Wednesday, and I was sticking to it. And that's how the contest started, actually, because I didn't have an episode, and I was like, oh crap, I got to record something. And I was like, oh, I'll make a contest. That should be easy enough. I wrote up the rules in a week, recorded the episode, and then that became the thing I'm most known for. People don't even know I have a podcast, but they go and have the contest tied to the podcast.
Yeah, we were definitely going to get to that. Why don't we dive into that? What's the contest?
There's a segue. So it's a board game design contest. It's very much modeled off of Cardboard Edison's award. So it's open to all kinds of board games, all unfinished, so nothing published, no video games. Cardboard Edison says no RPGs. I have not specifically said no RPGs because the line between board game and RPG is real blurry. Mm-hmm. So obviously if someone wants to hand in a 600-page book, it's probably not going to go over well with the judges. But, if you have 10 pages of story and you move a little thing around on a map and you have stats, is that an RPG? Is that a board game? Is HeroQuest an RPG? I think you could argue that it is, but it's definitely a board game. So it's very open to all kinds, all styles. Couple of restrictions, has to generally be family friendly, so nothing too risque. We've actually, with just last year's contest, I split it into 3 categories. So there's light, medium, and heavy. Because one of the issues in earlier years was they have a very tight restriction for video time. Like round 1 is only a 2-minute video, and that's really tough for a heavy game. So it would generally favor lighter games because it's easier to talk about, it's easier to do a video, it's easier to describe online in general. So it's split up into categories.
Gloomhaven in 2 minutes,
Yeah. So it's so we split it up, and that actually, it definitely helped the bigger games get through because they had to. Even if only 10 big games showed up, they would make it through to the next round.
Yeah.
It's been going well, and we had almost 150 submissions last year.
Yeah, it wrapped up. Did it wrap up a month ago?
October. Yeah, October wrapped up.
Oh, okay. Man, time is weird in a pandemic.
Oh, definitely. It definitely is.
I remember judging, because you opened it up to where everybody could just sign up and be a judge, and you could judge a few games.
Right, that's the other unique thing. So I like to use the phrase anyone can judge, but that's technically not true. Some people are bad people, and I don't want them involved in my contest. So if you're not a bad person, you're welcome to judge. And so, lots of different contests have different systems of judging, and I think they are all valuable in their own way. Like some go out to, GameCrafter, their first round of judging is just the GameCrafter community, which is a certain type of person that's interested in a certain type of thing. Some stick to just professionals, so publishers or media people and stuff. I like to keep mine very open, so you get a lot of different feedback. So there are some publishers, lots of designers, so they give you a certain view of what a game should be and what you can do. They give a lot of very detailed, drilled down feedback. But also there's a lot of people that just play games. So if they look at your game and their feedback might not be as detailed or as quote unquote helpful, but what they often give you is a lot of support. So wow, this is really cool. I love this theme. This looks great. And I love hearing that about my games. So maybe it doesn't tell you to fix something, but it gives you that little burst of energy to be like, you know what? I should keep doing this. I'm not going to throw it away and quit my my designing career. So
Yeah.
we get a lot of feedback. I try to get just a lot of feedback for everyone. This past year was rough. We had a lot less judges, which I think 2021 was just a pain on everyone's schedule. I think surprisingly 2020, the pandemic was, well, maybe worse. It's hard to tell at this point. But a lot of people were remote in 2020, so people had a lot of free time and things were actually easier to do for the most part as long as you can do it remotely. 2021, personally, I find I'm working 5 days a week now, but lots of stuff is still remote. So not only am I working 5 days a week, but I'm working 5 days a week and then in addition producing videos for people that are doing stuff remotely. So my workload has increased, and I think that's happened with a lot of people where they're kind of in person and remote at the same time, so doing twice as much work. And that's been tough.
Yeah. Well, I think 2020 was the year I popped in and judged a couple. I think I judged like 6 or so.
6 is good. Oh yeah, that's the other thing. I only require judges to judge one game, because every judge helps. So 6 is great.
Yeah. And then it's like you weed some out for round 2, right? And then round 3 is finally the like in-person playing.
So it used to be, not anymore. So yeah, so again, 2020, thanks for disrupting the entire world and making everyone's system change. So for 2020, we did a hybrid in-person and online. So if people could make an online one, which some games don't work that way, or some people just don't have the ability to get it online. So we did both. The in-person was tough. Had to mail some games around, find local people that had groups that they were quarantined with, because I do not live with enough people that I could actually play anything. So I was finding groups and like delivering a bag of games to them. They would play it. I would get it back. Took forever. Then online was smoother in some ways because you don't need to be in the same place. But running games online is just more difficult in general and getting people together. So that was kind of a mess. So that made me decide I need something better if this pandemic is going to continue for the rest of my life. So I decided, why not change round 3 to a speed pitching event?
Oh.
So we did. And I talked, actually at first I was just reaching out to publishers I knew. And then one of my friends in the Boston Game Makers Guild said, oh, you should talk to Heather O'Neill. She runs speed pitching events. I'm like, oh, that's great. And I kind of knew Heather. We'd like met at various conventions and stuff. So I talked to her, and like that's a service she does, like professionally. She will, because she has a lot of connections. So I talked to her. She set up the whole thing. She ran the event for me. So that was great. I think we ended up having, I want to say 6 publishers there for the 10 finalists, and they just round robin through. So every game got to look at every publisher, or every publisher got to look at every game, however you say that.
Either way, right?
Yeah, it went really well. They got a ton of feedback, this time from publishers and stuff. I don't know if any deals came out of it, but definitely a lot of useful feedback for people. And for a lot of them, it was the first time they'd ever pitched. So I think that's the other benefit of contests in general, is they force you to do things you wouldn't necessarily do. Like you have to make a sell sheet. You have to get things done by this deadline. And it forces you to move forward, even though you would, I'd rather take another week. But that another week can take 6 years and you'll never get anything done. So being forced to do something, even if you do it poorly, is a step forward. You're like, oh, I've learned that is not how I should present my game to a publisher. And next time you'll be better, maybe.
Hopefully.
So, hopefully. But yeah, overall it went really well. So we'll be continuing that, hopefully. I technically haven't decided if I'm going to do the contest again, but I'm leaning towards yes.
It's just kind of a figuring things out stage, right?
Well, 2021 was just schedule-wise, emotionally, like personally, it was a very rough year. And the contest is a very high-stress thing for me. Like, I enjoy it. It is possibly the most enjoyable thing I do in a year, but it is also the biggest project I've ever worked on in my life. So it can get stressful. And at the end of it, I feel a sense of relief. I'm like, okay, maybe I shouldn't do that again. That was a lot of work. But then you wait a couple months, you're like, you know what? I should do a game contest. That was a lot of fun. And then I jump back into it, hopefully making it a little easier than before.
Yeah. Yeah, you live and you learn, but then you also forget, and so you have to learn again.
It's a cycle.
Constantly being reminded.
I keep refining the system as far as like how submissions work. I'm not a programmer or anything, but I know enough programming that I can do some stuff on the back end to make it easier for me. Like sending out all the feedback only takes a day to send out, I don't know, like 300,000 words of feedback to 150 people. Getting that system in place helped. The first year I did not have that, and it was a little rough.
The feeling I get here, and I kind of got this impression from listening to your podcast is that you're the type of person who's like, hey, I could do that, and you do it. Hey, I could do a podcast, so you do it. Hey, I could design a game, so you go and do it. Like,
yeah,
I like that a lot.
Most of my life decisions have been made last minute.
Don't overthink it.
If I overthink it, I'll never do it. Well, that was kind of the thing with the podcast. Like I originally got the idea in the summer, and then I was like, oh, I'm gonna do a video channel. I should get the stuff. I bought a camera. I bought a new hard drive. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna do this. I'm like, you know what? I should just do a podcast. Just made some appointments, recorded a couple things, posted it. Didn't even know what I was doing. The first ones I posted on SoundCloud, and then once I hit the free limit, I was like, I got to figure something else out. But yeah, it's always so. I'll jump into projects, do my best, not necessarily fail, but definitely see where I could improve. And either it is not interesting enough for me to continue, so I just move on, or it's enough. So I'm like, okay, I see where I can do better. I will do better, and just repeat that ad infinitum. And yeah, so if I started in 2016, this is 5 years, and I just got 100 episodes. That seems kind of reasonable.
Yeah, that's
maybe
not
it's
bad
4
at
years.
all.
If it's 4 years, that's even better. No, it's definitely going to be 5 years then.
Because you can't have it be too good, right?
I definitely wasn't releasing more than 30 episodes a year.
Yeah, you just hit 104?
I just hit 100, yeah. Something like that. 100, maybe only 101.
I don't know, yeah.
You would know better than I do. I don't actually get to listen to my podcast that much because I'm behind on podcasts again.
There's so many other podcasts to listen to now, too.
There really are. And I found yours, which added to it.
Yeah, I'm guessing you found mine through Phil.
So, actually, I don't know where I found the name of yours, but I did not hear about it from Phil. I found the name. There's actually, I had just added 3 podcasts most recently. So it's yours, Board Game Binge, and I think it's something like Game Design Unboxed or something.
Oh, okay.
But I just found those 3, and I looked through the list, and I'm like, oh, is there, and you do interviews with people that I've heard of. So I'm like, oh, which ones are interesting? I'm like, oh, Phil's on this, and Dustin's on this. Okay. And listen to a bunch of other stuff. And that's how I got hooked in.
Oh, cool. Well, that's exciting. Yeah, that's kind of the hope, is that it's like I interview so many different types of people. There's got to be at least one person somebody knows and wants to hear more about, and then hopefully that draws them in to learn about more people.
Exactly.
So, I still need to have Dustin on for a full episode.
You really do.
Yeah.
Dustin's great.
Yeah.
Episode 102 was the design contest finalist. That's the last one I released.
Oh, okay. There we go.
December 7th. So yeah, it's been more than a month now.
I think that's why I was thinking it was last month, was because it was released in December.
So when you said I finished up last month, technically I did, because that was the last thing I had to do for the contest was that episode. And it took so long to get to.
I have several actual bonus type episodes where I've had ideas for something, like getting pieces from other people and compiling it into an episode, or it takes so much time, and I don't know if those episodes will ever come out.
So that's have you listened to all my episodes at this point?
So I listened backwards. I think I have 40 left still.
Okay, so you might not have gotten to these yet. But so when I started, I was just doing, actually I started as a 15-minute interview podcast, which maybe I should have kept to that. Less editing. Then I got the idea to start doing roundtables and having guests on. And that was a more interesting discussion and had less setup time. Because when I was interviewing people, I would do research and what question should I ask? I was doing professional background reporting kind of stuff, because that's what I grew up with, learning this is how you do an interview. That's a lot of work. That's a ton of work for a side job. So I switched to roundtable and just get people on. We'd have a topic this is years ago now, but we'd just like worker placement. We just have 3 or 4 people talk about worker placement and all sorts of stuff. And those are the episodes I really enjoy, because you go in all sorts of different directions, and maybe you don't talk about worker placement at all, but you have a fun time with some good people. Then it was tough to get multiple people together. I'm sure you've dealt with scheduling issues just finding one person, but if you're trying to get 4 people together, that is a mess, especially with time zones. But so I said, oh, I can get some contributors, and they'll just do their own little segment. They record on their own, no scheduling issues, and they'll just send it to me, and I'll put some stuff on. And I kept that for a while. It was alternating episodes. I do a contributor set show and then a regular roundtable. But it is really tough to organize a bunch of people, even if you don't have to be in the same place at the same time. So it's constantly, who can do an episode? Do you have anything? And like, people are busy. I get it. I'm busy too. I don't have time to record my podcast, which is why I only released 8 episodes last year. But so that ended up being more work, not less work. So I kind of went away from that. And then it was the end of 2019. So at least all of 2019 and 2018, I was releasing episodes bi-weekly, regularly, no matter what. And then at the end of 2019, I said, I'm not going to commit to a regular schedule anymore.
Yeah, I remember when you announced that on the podcast.
I did not know how great that was going to be going into 2020, because, as you know, that was a mess of a year.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I plan on doing, I still have to do my end of year episode from last year. But I think I'm going to announce that I'm going to go onto a regular schedule again, because I work better with deadlines, but it might be lower quality editing, and it might be just me talking sometimes.
Well, you did the design diary episodes.
Oh yeah.
And I liked those.
I should finish those up, because I kind of, actually, I'm back on that game, and now I started a publishing company, so I have things to talk about. I should do solo episodes, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, you might as well. Oh, I really liked those. As I knocked my drink down.
Actually, it's funny. I think it's the end of 2019 is still my number one listened to episode on my new platform. It doesn't have the old data, so
weird.
Could be not true anymore. But yeah, for whatever reason, it's like 10 minutes long. And it was the most listened to episode.
Interesting. I'm always curious why certain episodes do so much better than other ones.
Yeah, it's bizarre, because that one, like, it's not an important episode at all. It's not really about anything. It's just me saying I'm lazy and not going to do a bunch of episodes.
Maybe that's
but
why
it's short. So
yeah,
maybe
it's because people were like, "Oh, it's 10 minutes. I can try that out," and then they were like,
"Maybe if they look at the time." That's the other thing. I realize I don't listen to podcasts like a lot of people do. Like, I subscribe to a podcast, and then I listen to every episode at triple speed, which is how I get through so many episodes.
Oh,
but
nice.
Other people just pick like random episodes to listen to, and that seems so weird to me.
I always just start with the newest episode and work my way backwards. Like, 2019.
That's even weirder to me. I could not go backwards.
Oh no! Okay.
So I think this all stems from, like I said, the first podcast I listened to was On Board Games. And I did not have other podcasts at the time, so I was just dedicated to that. And he started in 2005, and I started listening in like 2014, 2015. So he had 10 years of back episodes that I listened to in order. That guy's Mark Johnson. He's been playing games for a while. He's from California. Works, actually, I assume he still does work at JPL, doing like the Mars missions and stuff.
Oh.
So his podcast is about board games, and he talks about games he's played and stuff. But a bit of your life drops in there. You mention your family, you mention stuff. Sometimes you have your friends and family members on. So it was weird. I've never met the guy. I follow him on Twitter, but he doesn't really post much. I'd say I probably have the least interaction of him than anyone I know, quote unquote, in the game industry. But I listened to his family change over a decade. I listened about his kids growing up, his kids going to college, his kids getting married. And like, I got that whole story in like 4 months. So that's the other weird thing. But it's just a weird, it's a weird thing. So now I have to listen to them in chronological order, and skipping an episode feels bad.
That makes sense. And I've thought about doing it that way, but the reason I do it this way is because a lot of times when people first start, that's going to be like their roughest episode.
Oh, definitely. That is definitely the case.
Yeah. Like, my first podcast was Nerding Out, and it was with Dusty's brother. And we had no idea what we were doing. And so it's just like, really, really bad microphones.
Right. But if you start from the beginning, you're like, wow, this is bad. And then it gets better. The way you're going, it's just going to get worse.
Yeah, but then I'll be like, oh, you know what? I already have grown attached to the person.
Fair enough. It's safer that way. You're less likely to quit.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas if I start with the first, like, I get a little, like, edgy.
You don't watch the pilot. You start in season 2 when it gets good.
Dang it. All right, you raise good points. I might try. And if I feel like quitting, I'll be like, you know what? I'm going to jump to the newest episode and just listen and see if it got better.
Just listen to like every 10th episode until it gets good. And you're like, okay, here's the spot.
Yeah. Although it is really weird going backwards because sometimes like board game hot takes, they'll be talking about a game and they'll be like, yeah, we played this game, a few episodes ago. And then I'll get back there and be like, oh, this is it. I already know their impressions on this.
So actually it's, are you familiar with the whole like Merlin mythology, how he lived life backwards? So, like original Merlin in was it the Once and Future King, which I don't know if that's original Merlin. I'm not super into Arthurian legend, but anyway, the thing with Merlin is he lived life backwards. So for him, first meetings were very sad because that was the last time he was going to see anyone, but goodbyes were happy because he was just meeting someone for the first time. So that's kind of his whole thing. Why he was like knew things that were going to happen because he's living life backwards. But it gives you a very different perspective. So, yeah, like going through things.
That is really interesting.
Actually, I felt similarly when I had that huge backlog and I was like 300 episodes behind from not commuting, which I don't know if I mentioned that while recording or not. But anyway, that's a thing that happened, people. So anyway, I got to listen to all of the 2020 episodes having already experienced 2020. So some of the things they were talking about, I knew were not going to happen, or I knew were going to go very, very poorly. Like they were talking about going to conventions in the summer of 2020, and that did not happen. That did not happen at all for anyone.
Yeah.
So it's a very interesting perspective.
We've been binging some older or some shows like SVU. My wife loves SVU.
Yep.
And we got to the 2020
I do
episodes.
too. It's not just her.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I enjoy it too. And they started talking about like, oh, it looks like things are getting better, And I was just like, no, like you're assuming that by the time your next season starts, everything will be better. It won't be.
There was a lot of optimism at the end of 2019. It's kind of weird to look back on.
Oh yeah. But the same thing with podcasts where they'll be talking about like conventions, tours, or I mean, even, this is somewhat pandemic related, but shipping. Yeah. The whole shipping mess right now, people being like, oh, I'm going to be getting my game here in a month or two. And it's like, still don't have it, buddy.
Yeah, that's been a mess.
Yeah.
That's been a mess since the, what ship was that? Because it's stuck in the canal. And that was just the start of it.
Yeah.
I was such a mess because they had one name on the ship, but that was the company. That wasn't the name of the ship, and everyone was confused.
I know, because it had like the Evergreen or
Source? No.
Something like that.
Evergreen was something. And then something was the other thing. Yeah.
I'm sure listeners are like, it's this, you dummies. Listen, there's so much stuff, we can't remember it.
I know. Who can remember tragedies that far back?
Yeah.
Then another one got stuck, but no one talked about it.
I know, I saw that. It wasn't as big of a deal.
People are just over it. Like,
Yeah.
Just get stuck there all the time, apparently.
This is normal. It's fine.
It seems to be becoming normal. But yeah, shipping. Terrible.
Yeah. Well, for a second there, you were talking about getting to know people and their lives through the episodes. Yeah. How about you? Let's hear about you outside of board games.
Oh, so there is not much. I am very, very, very absorbed in board games. When I'm not doing a podcast, which is often, I am designing. When I'm not designing, I'm probably at work dealing with children in a high school TV studio, it's a particular kind of job that is not for everyone. And it has gotten very tough these past 2 years. I think there's just a general conception that after the pandemic, children are worse people. Like they are mean and disrespectful and occasionally violent. So it has become a much harder job.
Really? Yeah, my wife's a second grade teacher, so she has like they're very defiant. But I imagine high school's different.
Yeah, so I generally work in high school. I have done classes with middle school. Middle school is very tough. That's a tough time to be a person, and it is a tough time to deal with people who are in that time of their life. It's not pleasant for anyone.
Yeah.
But I did a couple of animation classes with elementary students, 3rd and 4th grade at a Montessori school. They were amazing. They were so into it because I came in as like, okay, I'm going to teach you how to make cartoons, and they're like, yes, let's do that. And they learned everything I told them about computer animation, and they all made animation. Some were very good and some were less so, but they were all super excited about it. And every day I came in, like, yeah, we're going to do this, and I want to do this and this. And it was so great. By high school, they have lost all of that interest. And I get, I think, what I have, like 125 students a semester, and maybe 3 of them are interested in doing what we do.
Wow.
So it's a lot of people that don't want to be there, and that brings it down for the group.
Yeah. Yeah, one bad actor can bring it down.
And 20 can really bring it
down. Well, so you're married, you have kids?
I'm married, I have cats.
Nice, us too.
That's the way to go, cats.
How many cats do you have?
So we have 3. There's a whole story about cats. So growing up, I did not like cats. I was afraid of cats. I had a bad incident with my aunt's cat when I was very little, and it scratched me. And I was just kind of very hesitant of cats since then. I stay away from them, they stay away from me. That's fine. I was much more of a dog person. And we had a dog. He actually passed at the beginning of the pandemic. We had to put him down because he was older though, and so it's expected, but always sad to see him go. But actually, in what year is it? 2010, must have been 2016. So in 2016, this cat started coming in our yard. My wife loves cats. She grew up with cats. She wanted a cat. I was like, I'm afraid of cats. I don't know if we can have a cat. We can't have a cat with Buddy, who is our dog. He doesn't deal well with cats and stuff. So we didn't have cats. Then this cat starts coming to our yard. And my wife feels really bad for her. So we put out some food, make sure she's okay. We actually get a lot of stray cats around here. We live on the edge of the woods. So I think they just live in the woods. Cool. So she fed the cat and stuff. I'm like, oh, is she okay and stuff? And for whatever reason, like this cat was particularly friendly, like coming up to my wife and like rubbing on her and stuff. So we were thinking like maybe it had a home. We put a collar on it and a note saying like, does anyone own this cat? And then it came back later with no collar and no note. We didn't hear anything. So we assumed just a stray cat. So my wife caught her in a carrier and brought her to the vet just to get her checked out. Then we decided we would take her in. Turns out she was going to give birth in a week. So we went from no cats to 6 cats real fast.
Oh my goodness.
We were trying to see like if anyone would take her when she was pregnant, if like a shelter would take her, like not really, we can't deal with a pregnant cat and like no one would be able to take care of the kittens. So if you can take care of them, then that's fine. So we kept her and they were born and they're adorable and I became a cat person. We found homes with one of my friends took 2 of them, and then her parents took one of the other ones. So we kept the 2 boys and the mother. So we have 3 cats now, and I love them more than I ever thought I could love a cat. And that is my journey.
I love that because it's the same type of thing with me. I never thought I would like cats, and then my wife had a cat when we got married. So like I had to deal with that, and I loved it.
Now you have a cat.
Yeah. And then we got 2 more, and they're just amazing. They're so much cooler than you think they would be.
Yeah, I mean, so my main fear was that they're very sharp and very quiet. And generally, sharp, quiet things dangerous. And that is not untrue. But after getting sliced up by a cat a couple of times, it's not that bad. You get used to it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm like looking at the scars on my arms from the scratches.
Yeah, see, it's like the first time you get cut by a cat, you're like, wow, that is terrible. Cats are mean. And like the 400th time, like, whatever.
Yeah, it's fine. They scratch.
It's very similar to the first time you bring your prototype somewhere and people tell you it's bad and it hurts. But then a couple years later, like, yeah, of course it's terrible. I know.
That's why I brought it here, so it could get better.
So yeah, owning cats and designing games, exactly the same thing.
That's the prep. If you can prototype your game, get a cat. If you are afraid to prototype your game, get a cat and get used to it.
Yes.
Sage words, my friend.
Actually, so kind of side connection of that. Not sure if you know about this, but there's some chemical or poison or whatever that is found in cat feces. That's why pregnant women should not be near cat feces at all and can't clean litter boxes. But I looked into it, so some poison. It's not necessarily dangerous to humans. But the little research they've done on it, it can actually make you, how do you phrase it, less averse to risk or more likely to take risks.
Oh, yeah.
And they think that it's something that, if that's, given to a rodent or something, the rodent is more likely to not run away from a cat. But in theory, if a human is exposed to that, maybe they're more into taking risks and they'll start designing board games or start a publishing company or start a podcast. All sorts of things that maybe if you thought about it for an extra day, you would decide not to. So owning a cat could maybe make you be more exciting. Go with that.
Yeah, there we go. I really like that. And I'm thinking of Fabrizio Leotti, he did Hyper Wars just recently on Kickstarter. But he's going to take another run at it here in a little bit. But he's got 6 cats, and they're all indoor cats. So maybe that's why he started designing.
We're going to do some Kickstarters.
Yeah.
If you own 6 cats, you're going to do a Kickstarter. That's just how it is.
Exactly. He was ready. That's funny. What about your wife? Does your wife play games with you?
She does. She is not as deep into the hobby as I am. She really likes mystery. She loves escape rooms and escape room games. And she really likes heavy story games. Betrayal at House on the Hill and Dead of Winter are 2 of her favorite games that we can almost never play because we don't have other people to play them with. The first, I would say, real hobby game that she bought for herself was Stuffed Fables, which she is very excited about and wants to play. But it is a massive thing to get to. And I was kind of disappointed. Have you played Stuffed Fables at all? Or no?
Just one chapter of it, yeah.
The rules are way harder than they should be for that style of game.
It does kind of seem that way.
There's so much setup and exceptions and stuff every time we play, which is, we haven't gotten up to the table much. But every time it's okay, we got to look through the book 3 times. How do we set this up? When do the minions attack? What triggers this? There's so much. I'm kids are supposed to play this game.
Yeah. Well, that's what people were telling me. They're like, oh, this was a great game. When I was reading the reviews of it, they were saying, oh, this was great to play with my 8-year-old. This was great to, I'm just like, what? This was hard for me and my 30-year-old brother to play.
So that's the thing. We brought it over my in-laws for Christmas because my wife really wanted to play it. So we set it up.
Yeah.
And we did story 2, and her brother read the opening story. Going through all the rules, her father almost fell asleep. And he was like, are we really doing this? It was done before it started, which I imagine is also a problem with an 8-year-old.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
But I love the concept. I love the story. It's really cute. It looks great. There's so much to it, which is tough.
Yeah, it's fun once you get going. But I think that's the way for a lot of games. A rule-heavy game.
But I expect to spend a day learning how to play Eclipse and then spending 6 hours to play it.
That's true.
When I open up a storybook about stuffed animals going to get a blanket, I do not expect to go through hours of rules.
That's a very good point. Yeah, the expectation is important.
But it's great, and eventually we will finish it. But yeah, it was a surprise. That's what I'll say. It was a surprise.
It seems like it'll be good. We keep meaning to get back. He bought the expansion and everything.
I think we have to play it more in a row. We go 3 or 4 months between plays, and you're where was everything? What was the setup? So it's partially on us.
Totally get it. Oh, that kind of brings up what's your favorite board game?
What's my favorite board game?
It's a hard question.
So Race for the Galaxy is always the top of my list. That was like I was saying, that was one I played before I really got into the hobby when I was just playing Magic. Actually, I used to win that game before I understood the rules. So I have a soft spot in my heart for that. But now I have the app, so I run through that a lot. Isle of Skye, that's another one at the top of my list, although I don't get to play that as much.
I don't know. I'm blanking on that one.
Oh, Isle of Skye, it's so it's similar to Carcassonne in that you're building out with tiles. Each person is building out a little gridded map of Scotland. So Isle of Skye in Scotland, you're each like a different Scottish clan. But mainly there's Actually, I haven't played this in a while. I got to describe it right. So you randomly get 4 scoring tiles at the beginning that determine how everyone's going to get points. And the order they show up in matters because there's scoring A, B, C, and D. But at the end of round 1, you'll score like A and C. At the end of round 2, you'll score B and D. And then you'll score A and B and whatever. So whatever the order is. So you're really looking to like get certain things. So it's like, oh, longest road gets 5 points at the end of round 1. So you want to build the longest road. But then the longest road doesn't matter for like a couple of other rounds. So you've got to balance and like get the most cows or whatever.
That's clever.
So that's all fun. But then there's an auction system. So everyone gets 3 tiles to start. And those are public. But then they secretly decide they're going to discard one of those tiles. And then they put money on the other 2. That price is how much someone else has to pay you to take that tile. And if they don't, you pay that money. So if you really want a tile, you have to put a lot of money on it. And someone could take it, but then you get a lot of money. But if you don't want a tile and you put a lot of money on it because you want to get paid, you're like, oh, I know they want cows, so I'm going to put $5 on the cow. And someone else is like, nah, I don't need cows. You're like, crap, I don't need cows either. I just spent $5 on it. So there's this really interesting auction system. And then there's 2 expansions I bought that I have not played. But yeah.
I know how that goes.
An expansion doesn't count as an extra game, though, right? So it's not bad.
Well, that's what I was asking. I asked that on Twitter, and people were almost unanimously against me on that.
Nah, I agree.
See, that's what I think.
Component upgrades and expansions don't count as a new game.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Especially if they fit in the box.
Yeah.
Which they don't always fit in the box.
No. But then you have other things that, like Marvel Champions, love that game. I just get to keep putting things in the new boxes, in the expansion boxes.
Yeah, it's still just one game. Like, yeah. I have a Magic collection. That only counts as one game, despite the fact that it is literally larger than my entire board game collection.
Yeah. It's housed
just
in
one game
boxes.
Actually, it's multiple rooms at this point. I'm trying to get rid of my bulk. That's the thing I've been working on for years, is trim that down.
Do you still actively play Magic?
Yeah. That's a weird question with the pandemic. I want to say yes.
Oh, yeah.
I don't get out to many things because there aren't things to get out to. I generally play Commander with my friends, so we go over his house. But I haven't done that very much either. But then Magic Arena came out on mobile. That actually is how I lost a good chunk of last year, was just playing Magic Arena. So yes, I actively play Magic.
Okay.
But I don't actively play with the physical cards that are taking up all that space.
Yeah. That's what another guest, David Spira, who does escape rooms, he talked about how he loves Magic Arena because he gets to play it and he doesn't have to
it's dangerous.
Take up space.
It's real dangerous. Actually, I got real deep into it, and there's a ranking system, and it's typical ranking. You got to win games to move forward. If you lose a game, you move backwards. And I was sinking so much time into that, trying to get to whatever the top is, Mythic. So get to Mythic level. And it happened like the first month I played. I was like, oh, this isn't actually too hard. Then the second month, it was real hard. And I spent hours and hours every day trying to go through, and you get knocked down, you move up a level, you move down 2 levels. And then finally, a couple months ago, I was like, this is taking over my life. Because another thing I do is I do a digital 10x10. So, the 10x10 game challenges where you play 10 games 10 times. So I started doing digital ones a couple years ago. So I just play against AI on my phone and just play a bunch of different games. It's usually pretty easy to get through. After 2020, I had finished my 10x10 so quickly because I had a lot of free time that I was like, I'll do a 12x12 for 2021. Then in April, Magic came out, and I did not play a digital game besides Magic from April to October.
Whoa.
But I finally stopped playing ranked mode. I have much more fun playing now. It is not stressful. And I got my 12x12 done by playing 60 games in December.
That's cool. Wow, that's crazy.
It is indeed.
I haven't played Magic really since before I got married. So that's 8 years.
It's
and
amazing,
even then I only played an occasional
but
game.
Don't do it.
Yeah. Well, last night my brother invited me over to BM for him, which is for the Bunkers and Badasses, the Borderlands RPG.
Yeah.
And when I got there, 3 of them were playing Magic together, and I was like, oh, that looks fun.
It is so much fun.
But they invited to set me up with a deck, and I was like, no, I shouldn't.
It is a lifestyle game, though. It really is. You get into it, And especially if you're a board game designer, like I think that's where I really started game design, is designing decks for Magic. Like that's always the most fun part. Like I could design decks all days and never play. I have tons of decks that I've designed and never played, much like game designs I've never bothered to play. But it's that systematic creative outlet that I think works very well for a lot of game designers.
Yeah, I've heard very similar things of talking to other designers. They're like, yeah, Magic was kind of what got me into it, because
the problem is when you're still in both. So am I losing sleep because I'm designing a Magic deck, or am I losing sleep because I'm designing a board game? Either way, well, I'm not sleeping much.
Let's talk about your game designs. We haven't gotten into that.
Oh, right. I design games. Yeah, so like I said, I designed that first game when I got into it. That was terrible. That's never going to be a thing. So not only did I design a bad game, I then prototyped it by hand. So what this game really wanted was a bunch of 8mm wooden cubes. I didn't know that was a thing you could buy. So I cut out hundreds of little pieces of foam core that I had stuck colored stickers on. It was dumb.
Wow.
But doing that was the reason I found the GameCraft. I'm like, I'm never doing this again. And now I know all sorts of things. Now I have way too many wooden cubes that I'm never going to use. So I've gone in the other direction. Then after that, I designed something. It's a game. It's not a something. Called Space Station Disaster. It's a fun little thing. I really want to rework it. Posted it on Board Game Geek way before it should have been posted. Like it's quote unquote finished and playable, but I see a lot of room for improvement. So that was my first good game design. And that I submitted to the Boston Fig. Are you familiar with Boston Fig? So Boston Festival of Indie Games is the biggest indie game festival in the world, the country, one of those things.
Oh, wow.
But it's digital games and tabletop games. I had just heard about it, like when I started designing this game. My mother found it because she's trying to help me out. She's like, oh, here's a board game thing that's in Boston. I was like, okay, sounds cool. Went, looked at it. It's a pretty neat event. You can just submit your game, and if you meet their requirements and are good enough, you like the top 48 games, or give or take, depending on the year, get a table in the showcase. So it's like $25 to submit your game, but the table is free. If you've ever tried to present your game at a convention, $25 for a table is absurd. It's usually, $500, $1,000 to actually get a table. So I submitted mine the next year and got a table, and that was really neat. And I still did not know very much about the world of game design or anything. I hadn't started the podcast yet, but that was a really neat experience showing it off. People seemed to enjoy it. I released it as a print and play. Some people actually printed it and showed pictures of their stuff. Someone made a tabletop simulator mod of it, and I did not know what tabletop simulator was at the time. And now things going on with tabletop simulator, we'll deal with that at some point. Yeah. That's been a very sudden disruption to my prototyping. But that aside, yeah. So
are you talking about with Zoe?
Yes.
Okay, I was planning on talking about that at the end of the episode by myself, but
well, anyway, we can bring up you want. It's a very sudden and very big disruption to. Like I had a playtest set up for this evening that is now canceled because no one's going to use Tabletop Simulator. So yeah, I gotta learn some new systems.
Yeah.
Or end this pandemic so we can go back to in person. That would be cool.
Hey, that would be better. Could you end this, please, Chris?
You know what? I think it was just playing games online was the only distraction. Now that that's over, I can get to it. But yeah, so Boston Fig it's a great event. Then after that, Boston Fig kind of alerted me of the Game Makers Guild in Boston. So I joined up with there, started designing tons of stuff. I found out about a design contest for Button Shy, so I submitted 10 designs to their first design contest.
Whoa.
They now have a rule that you cannot submit multiple designs to their design contest because of me.
Way to go, Chris.
I'm making changes. So none of them won. None of them moved on. But one game was interesting enough to one of the judges that they brought it to the in-person testing for the finalists, and they said, you got to try this game. So they did. And Jason liked it enough, and so the game is in Vino Morte, which is now published. Spoiler. But it was originally an 18-card game, but they also do nano games for their Board Game of the Month project. And they're like, oh, would you be interested in releasing this as a 9-card game? So a rule and then 8 cards, so like basically half the size of the real one. And I was like, yes, why would I? I'm not going to turn that down. First chance to be published. So they published that as the nano game. And then I don't know if it was because of interest, but mostly because the game is only wine cards and poison cards. So it is very easy to print. So Jason had an opening in their wallet game line. I was like, oh, would you be interested in Vino Morte becoming a wallet game? And again, yes, obviously, I'm not going to say no to that. I've got nothing else to do with this game. So it became a wallet game. And it was part of one of their few, if not their only 3-game Kickstarter, which turns out was a very hard thing to market, and they've moved away from it and just stick to the 1 game now. And sometimes don't even do Kickstarters now. They're off that monthly thing. But it came out in, so the original was 2016, then I think the wallet was 2018. Now it's one of their top-selling games. And it keeps selling year after year. And it's kind of absurd, because I never play-tested that game. I just submitted it as one of the 10 games, not thinking anything of it. I had a lot higher expectations for the other games that I put a lot of work into, and design and play testing and stuff. This is just this dumb little, either you have wine or poison, and you're going to drink the cup in front of you or drink the cup in front of me. Like, the game made itself. But it plays so well. It's absurdly interesting, and people love it. So that was my big hit. I have not done anything that big since. I've released a couple other things with Button Shy. I did a 13-episode roll and write that you don't need dice for called Tempest Quest, which is based off of Tempest Imperium, which is it's roll and write that you don't use dice for. You use the date and time to set it up instead.
That's interesting. I need to look at that one.
Yeah, so Tempest Imperium is free and it's sloppy. Tempest Quest Episode 0 is free, but that's a 13-episode. It's a story too, so it's got a little comic at the top that
cool.
Robin Gibson did the comics and like wrote up the story. So I came up with a very like skeleton of a plot, and it's basically Star Wars meets Firefly. Because
perfect.
How can you go wrong with that?
Yeah.
But so yeah, it follows this crew like going through space and fighting the not Empire, because it's called something else, obviously. What are they called? I don't remember. Anyway, that's a fun little thing. Like, I really like the comics. The games were tough because Jason from Button Shy asked if I'd be interested in using my Tempest system to do something with that. I was like, yeah, that's great. Again, I'm not going to turn down the option to be published. But it is really tough to make 13 unique games in a short span of time. So that was a very tough project. But in the end, I am happy that it happened, and it gave me a lot of ideas for the Tempest system, which now I've been working on something to release on my own, because like I mentioned, I started a publishing company, and shipping is terrible. So my first release, if I stick to this, again, I've changed my mind multiple times, will be just a print and play, basically a redesign of Tempest Imperium that is fixed with all the stuff I learned from doing Tempest Quest. But also, I figured out a system to make different maps. So my plan, and this is the first time I'm announcing this publicly. So,
ooh, exclusive.
Here's my plan. So tell me if you think this is a good enough selling point.
Okay.
So the game, it's a single page PDF to print a game. You don't need any dice. You need a pencil, and you need to know the day and the time. And you don't even really need to. You could make up a day and a time. It doesn't matter. Those are just the numbers that you use to basically, it seeds the map with your setup, and it controls what actions you have. So like rolling dice, it's a randomized string of numbers. So because I can make different maps with variable difficulty, I figure it'll be a $1 tier. That's it. Nothing higher. I mean, you can give me extra money if you want. I'd appreciate it. But just $1. And I'm thinking I'll start. So at the base level, the $1 gets you 25 maps with 3 difficulties each. So I'll get you 75 maps.
Whoa.
Then every dollar will be a stretch goal to add a map. Because I could make, I think it's a little over 2,000 maps. So for the first $2,000, we'll add a map. And each map is 3 difficulties. So each map is actually 3 maps.
Wow.
So would you pay $1 for potentially 2,025 games?
Yeah. I
See?
mean,
now I just need 100 people to agree with you.
Well, and people like essentially that's if you see a Kickstarter and you're interested in it, sometimes you just do $1 to get access to the pledge banner in case you like it.
That's my plan. Like it's very simple. Like it's just what do you call it? What's a roguelike? Something not randomly generated, but procedurally generated. So it's procedurally generated maps. So making multiple maps is not difficult. Honing and testing the system takes some time, but I've been doing that for several years now with the various systems. So I think I've got a lot of it down. The question is, do I use my not great art, which is functional, or do I put up the money to actually pay an artist, which I think I will, but then I may or may not make money on the project. But I think if it's only one page, that should be easy enough. We'll see. You gotta take risks, right? This is what we talked about earlier. I have cats.
Yeah, you're gonna do it.
I am gonna do it. But
have you taken a good whiff of the feces today? The litter?
Not today. I empty the box every night though. So that's when I get my inspiration.
Night is your most productive, your highest risk time of day.
Probably safer that I go to bed right after that. But yeah,
I really like that idea. How would you run it on Kickstarter or a crowd, or just do like a pre-order?
So Kickstarter is in a certain place right now. So
yes, that's why I wanted to ask it.
That's the other thing. I am unsure at the moment. So this was like I started my publishing company February last year, which again I was like, oh, I should start a publishing company. I got you familiar with the tabletop mentorship program?
Oh yeah.
So I was part of that when they first started, like maybe their first run. I was a mentor, but then I didn't do anything with it for a while. And I was like, you know what? I want to start a publishing company. This thing is starting up. They will match me with a publisher and teach me how to start a publishing company. So I did that. I got matched up with Eric Alvarez from Talent Strike Games. Great guy. He's helped with the contest and stuff a bunch too. So we had a bunch of meetings. He was my mentor. He went through it was kind of an insane information dump that first meeting. It's like, let's talk for an hour. Is it just an hour of him giving me every detail to start a company and everything I have to do? It's like pages and pages of notes. The meetings after that were like, oh, so anything else? Like, no, we kind of went over it all. So that was more of this talking about ideas for how to actually make specific games I was working on, which I've moved away from that design. But so part of that was I started my company. I filed the paperwork. I tied the podcast into that. So the contest works through that now financially, which is good because I don't actually make a profit off the podcast, as I'm sure you know from having a podcast, but enough money comes in and goes out that I should be legally tracking it.
Well, hey, that's a great thing. And does that mean you get to write off some board game purchases?
That's the theory. This year will be the first year I'm doing taxes for it, so I'm gotta go through all that and see if it's worth it. Yeah. Hopefully, yes.
I think so. I mean, yeah, if I ever made enough money at podcasting or designing, I'd be writing everything off.
The main thing is the contest. That's because I get the money in from the submissions, but then it goes back out so it pays for the hosting. It pays Heather for running the now I'm blanking on the name, the speed pitch.
Oh, right.
So I think I'm close to revenue neutral this year, and I was last year. The first couple of years I was at a loss.
Yeah,
I didn't have
pretty
a contest.
Normal for a new company.
Well, just a podcast. I mean, the contest is what supports it. That took off way more than I ever thought it would.
That is so cool.
So I recommend if you need to support your podcast, start a contest.
I actually have thought about that, and that's because of you,
See?
Because I do at the end of every episode, I do the ridiculous theme.
Yeah.
And so that's the idea for the contest. I might do a ridiculous theme contest and have people.
That would be great.
Do something like that.
For a little while, Button Shy, and this was right when they started their Discord, they were doing monthly design contests.
Yeah, I remember that.
Because a lot of people think there's not a lot of things you can do with 18 cards. It turns out there's a ridiculous amount of things you can do with 18 cards. They've had multiple hundreds of submissions to some of those contests. And that's just the one restriction.
It is so wild. That my mentor just had his game published on there. John Wood making Manhattan.
Yeah, I just got that one. Also, I own all the Button Shy
nice.
games.
Oh yeah,
that's my other claim to fame.
Did you post a picture of your shelf the other day with all of them lined up? Yeah, kind of color coded.
Yeah, then I had to post a second one because I had left one on another box.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's like one of the most complete collections outside of actual Button Shy headquarters. Although maybe including Button Shy headquarters, because I don't know if he has some of the older ones, because it was hard for me to get them because I started collecting later, and it's like the I don't know if it's technically the first one, but I don't remember the name of it. It's the metagame one where you have cards and you're like a certain type of thing, but if it like happens during game night, you like give your card to someone else. Why can't I remember the name of it?
Oh yeah.
Anyway, so that was one of their first ones, if not their first one, and then it was picked up by AEG. So you can get the boxed versions from AEG, but the wallet version was very hard to find. And because I became a designer and friends with Jason and stuff, he found some like in the warehouse, and I was able to get a copy. But it's really hard to get some of those older ones, like technically impossible if you don't find someone to sell it to you.
That is, wow. That's impressive. Bravo.
But now I can't stop buying Button Shy games, even if I wanted to, which I don't. They're great.
That's the problem with us board gamers. We're collectors.
I know. It is
so terrible. Many of us just can't resist that impulse.
Yeah, I mean, if you number some games, what's the other one? The little pack of gum games. I didn't buy those the first run. It was almost the first Kickstarter I ever backed. But then it said, "Oh, this will show up next year." I'm like, I'm not waiting a year for a game because I did not understand how Kickstarter worked. So I didn't back them. And then later I backed the second one. I'm like, now I have some numbers and I'm missing others. It's terrible.
Oh man,
feels bad every time I look at them.
Yeah, that's heartbreaking.
But they're like $6 a piece. I'm like, that's a lot for a little pack of gum game.
Are you planning on just self-publishing, or are you going to be open to bringing people in?
So my biggest hope is to publish other people's games, because just like with the contributor episodes, that means other people are putting in some work and I have to do less work. But I don't want to do that first. I definitely want to do my own games, learn how to do things right after failing. Because like we talked about, that's generally how I learn, is through doing. And if you learn through doing, the first thing you do is probably not great. Hence the only digital print and play Kickstarter or other crowdfunding platform that probably won't lose me a ton of money if it goes sideways.
Yeah.
But later, yes, I would like to take on other people's games, and I love to help people in the industry. So being a person that can make their game a reality, that'd be a great feeling.
Yeah. I think so.
That's my plan anyway.
Awesome.
We'll see. But see how it feels when I get there.
It feels so terrible if you just were like, oh, hey, Dustin, let's publish your game. And then it fell through and everything went Dustin. Wrong. And poor Dustin.
Well, that's the thing with shipping and stuff. I'm very, very hesitant now.
Yeah.
But you got to try, right?
I think with yours, you could avoid Kickstarters altogether or crowdfunding and just do a pre-order thing and do your own stretch goals on your site.
True. If
you're committed to just, even if only one person buys for $1, releasing those initial maps to that person.
So that's the thing. If I wasn't getting an artist, I would have no problem with that.
That's true.
But getting an artist, so I'd have to see how much it costs. Like, I don't know, if I'm out $100 to do that, that would be fine with that. Although if no one buys it, then that would feel bad.
Maybe that's the thing you do. Like, maybe that's an eventual stretch goal is, you get the Chris drawn maps, and then at a certain point you're like, now I can afford to do this, so this will get released to everybody. People who bought before get those Chris maps, and then everything after.
That's interesting.
I don't know. So look at this. Workshopping.
This is why we talk. So part of the thing was to learn the crowdfunding platforms and stuff. But now if Kickstarter is going sideways anyway, learning Kickstarter isn't helpful. So learning a different one. But maybe they're going to go sideways. I don't know. You can't trust any platforms nowadays.
Yeah.
But so maybe I just do that. Learn how to do it on my own. Interesting.
It's an interesting idea. But I mean, I
could definitely do it with this game. Like, I have the capability to produce this game.
Okay. The thing is, though, I mean, things like Kickstarter, you'll get random people who will see it, and
so there's the marketing.
That's
stuff.
the hard part, marketing.
So here's the added benefit of doing it myself. It doesn't ever need to end.
That's true.
As soon as one person buys a copy, I send a new map to everyone who's bought a copy.
That's very true. Which kind of keeps the game alive as well, because
Exactly. Because nobody wants to play 2,000 maps all at once.
yeah, like all of a sudden a month later, I'm just like, oh hey, two new maps came in. Let's play these.
Wow. Okay.
This is
got me
interesting.
thinking now. Got me thinking.
This is the fun part. This is
Okay. Well, that's okay. Back burner. That's
yeah.
Okay. Now I know what to do with my time I have freed up from not having a playtest tonight.
What's the publishing company name?
Ventic Games. Venntik. Ventic Games.
Perfect. Cool.
Because it means nothing, and when you search Ventic Games, my website comes up because it doesn't mean anything.
That's so smart. Yeah.
Yes. You can do SEO by being really popular or just being a weird name.
That's very smart.
But yeah, right now it's website's a little sparse. It has a print and play for Caterpillar Feast, which was originally Cantapillar Feast that submitted to the Gen Cant contest. But it's a fun little roll and write that I have also never tested, which my best games tend to be ones I never tested. But it got an honorable mention in the contest, and because it's free and very, light themed and number based, libraries seem to like it. So a couple libraries keep releasing it as a free print and play for their free game packages, especially during the pandemic. So
that's cool.
That's got a bit of a following that was very surprising. But I should play it someday. It seems fun.
Nah. Just keep designing. Move on to the next thing, right?
The most successful games are the ones I didn't test. So I don't know. I don't recommend it, but it is technically how my design career has gone.
I can't even imagine.
It's weird. Actually, awesome. I just talking to Jason. We got to set up a schedule. But Jason from Button, I'm going to have him on my podcast to actually talk about Il Vino Morte and that story. Finally, after years.
Yeah,
so, that should be interesting.
That'll be cool.
I know my side of it, which is just bizarre. More interesting to see the publisher side of it, who's actually put effort and money into this. But seems to be doing well for him. So
yeah,
it'll be an interesting talk.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I look forward to that.
So do I.
Well, let's start to wrap up here.
Sure. We got another podcast to record.
Yeah. At the end of each episode, I do a ridiculous theme.
Okay.
So I don't know if you caught that in the episodes you listened to.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Yeah.
I have heard it a lot. I've listened to a lot of your episodes. I did skip some for time, but I listened to a lot.
Oh, that's fine.
I think probably beginning of January, I'm close to on time.
Ooh.
Yeah. So
nice.
I'm listening to all of them now, even if they're bad.
Yes.
But yeah, ridiculous theme. Okay. Should I make up a new one or use one that I tried to make a game of?
Either way.
All right.
It's all fair game.
Here's one. I did actually try to design an 18-card game for this. I'm very intrigued by mundane themes. Like fighting your zombies and wizards flying around and spaceships, that's all great. Cooking is more mundane, but still very exciting. So I was looking what is boring? What is something nobody wants to do? So I wanted to design a game about merging traffic. Not driving so much. Very specifically, that one moment where you have to merge onto a highway. And if you've been driving, a lot of people struggle with this. So it can be exciting. But I could not get that game to work.
Man.
I had lots of ideas. So it's going to be a 2-player head-to-head game where you're kind of bluffing, kind of trying to outthink the other person and guess your speed. Should I go a little faster? Because if you go too fast and you hit them, then you lose. But if you go too slow, the cop behind you is going to hit you, and then you also lose.
Ooh, that's a cool balance there.
I thought it was interesting, but I have not been able to get it to work. But yeah,
for some reason, I was thinking single player.
See, that could be good too.
Yeah, or you could have a 2-player game of one person on one side and one on the other, and it's
you're both trying to merge into the traffic.
Yeah,
yeah, there's ways to do. I think it could be interesting.
I don't know. There's a lot of interest. Well, but keeping it 18 cards could be. I don't know.
I would give up on that if I thought of another thing. It was for a contest.
But
Or
you
is
could
going
just
for gambling.
cycle those like 3 or 4 cards
Well, that's the thing. It's
back
just a
into
couple
a
of
hand, and
a couple of them were movement cards, and a couple were the actual cards on the map. So you'd have, I don't know, that idea I think is interesting because it's something like not everyone, but most people who drive come to that situation a lot. And most of the time it is uneventful. But sometimes it is a real thing you have to pay attention to.
yeah, yes.
So I want that more interesting one. So I don't know. I say I like mundane themes, and then I try to lean towards the most exciting version of it.
Yeah.
Merging onto an empty highway. There's the game.
I really like that idea, actually. That's the fun thing about the ridiculous theme. It's like weird things just get the wheels turning.
They do. It's a great design exercise, if nothing else.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
Like, even if you don't come up with a great idea, like merging in traffic, you can still think of other things that you would use in a later design.
Well, but, some people we talk about in design, sculptors and painters.
Yeah.
Which are you?
Oh, both.
Yeah.
Oh, it's dangerous. So the game I'm working on now, currently called UltraCorp, is in version 25.8. This started off, my idea was to make a 4X game where nobody controls the factions. You're manipulating everyone, inspired by Imperial, which I have never played, but I heard someone talk about it on a podcast once. I'm like, oh, that's really neat. And that's where I get a lot of my ideas, is someone talking about it on a podcast.
Totally get it.
So I started designing that, and I was like, oh, it's going to be like a massive 4X game. I'm like, okay, this is too much. I got to trim stuff down. I got it to a super tight, changed it to a cyberpunk game. It was originally like medieval, and then it was sci-fi. And then cyberpunk, it's like super trimmed down. It's just like 50 cubes and a couple of boards. And everyone's like, wow, this plays really smoothly. It is not the game you wanted to make, and this other thing is terrible. Like, okay, just add on more features. So now it's a massive game again, but I'll depending on the game, like sometimes I'll start with a tiny idea and keep adding to it. Other times I'll start with these grand hopes and just trim it away until it works. But mainly I don't finish things, and we'll just keep designing back and forth, possibly forever. Because
that's the way to do it, I think, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you enjoy designing and you don't look to make a career out of this, why finish?
Yeah, just keep it going forever.
Yeah, well, this game's been like 4 or 5 years now.
Oh wow, yeah.
But 2 of those don't count.
Right. Pandemic years, no. That counts as like a month.
Yeah, that's what it felt like. One very long month. Oh, jeez. Yeah, I have no concept of time anymore. Like, it really wrecked my internal clock.
Oh, there's the idea for my ridiculous thing. Is that
wrecking someone's internal clock?
Yeah. You have to complete a project, but your concept of time is so weird.
You've got a group project to finish, but you're in a casino.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, like no sense of time.
There's no windows. There's just oxygen being pumped in. There's no clocks.
You've got 5 hours to do it.
Your phone's dead, so you can't look at your clock on there.
Yeah.
You can't call anyone to ask them what time it is.
So you got to kind of push your luck. Do you leave too early or leave too late? And where's the balance?
That sounds good. Yeah.
I like that this turned into a casino thing, because that is the absolute perfect thing. Like all of a sudden it's 6 a.m. and you're like, well, I didn't sleep today, I guess.
Well, that's the thing. It's very intentional. I mean, as much as gambling is different than game design, they've got game design down in a certain manner.
Oh yeah.
I would not call them fun games, but they're hitting people's triggers. They're good at it. They learned. And then mobile games did the same thing.
We need to start doing that for gaming conventions, right? You don't have a window. You don't have windows necessarily in all of the conventions. You just go in there, you start playing games, and all of a sudden it's 2 a.m. and
depending on the conventions. Some shut down, some let you game all night.
Yeah.
And that's the only way you find out what time it is. Like, oh, you got to leave. What do you mean got to leave? I just got here. Like, no, you've been here 11 hours, sir. Oh, I should eat.
Yeah. Oh no, I haven't eaten it all today. Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to that. Let's wrap this up then.
Sounds good.
There is one more thing, but I'm doing that as like a post credits thing.
Okay.
So that's new. You haven't heard that necessarily.
That's when you go out and hunt down all the Avengers to start your team?
Exactly. Yep. This is my post credits. Yeah. So go ahead and plug your stuff though.
Okay. My stuff. So, venticgames.com is very sparse, but it's a place to go and look at some stuff. You could follow Ventic Games on Twitter. I would announce things there if I had things to announce. My normal Twitter is BlueCubeBGS, which stands for Blue Cube Board Games, which is a website I used to have and had a blog, but I since shut it down and moved everything over to my podcast website, which is TheBoardGameWorkshop.com and the BG Workshop on Twitter. So you can follow those if you're interested in the podcast or the contest. You're probably more interested in the contest, honestly. Also, it has a Discord, which gets really active during the contest and then gets real quiet after the contest. So, yeah, all that stuff. I'm also part of the Game Makers Guild of Boston. We have a couple of talks we released on YouTube, if you're interested in that. We had some game designers and publishers come talk about things like Kickstarter and playtesting. And that's probably it. Oh, and buy Invino Morte from Button Shy. It's a great game.
Do it. I'm going to. My next Button Shy purchase, I'm going to. Because Phil and I talked about that one.
Yeah.
And he described it as the that moment in Princess Bride, right?
That was the inspiration.
Which drink. And I thought that was really clever.
I think the difference is I went way simple. That's a game that's been designed a lot of times. And a lot of people have done more complex systems, like how do you balance the poison in the wine? I went like the completely other direction. Actually, one of my favorite comments about it on Board Game Geek is someone said that people say Skull is the like purified version of poker, and Invino Morte is the purified version of Skull. So it is stupid simple. It's got a complexity rating of 1 that no one has disagreed with.
I saw that, which I love. I could get my wife to play that easily.
Yeah, it's like a 0-second teach and a 10-minute game if you have a big group. Also, with the base game, it says 3 to 9, but it can really play up to 16.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because you just need 1 card per person.
That's true, yeah.
So
interesting. I'll try that. Maybe I'll try that for the next family get-together. That would be really fun.
Yeah, especially if you have like a family group that doesn't really like games. Like they're playing before they realize they're playing, so they can't say no. You hand them a card and you say, do you want to drink this or not? And they say, I don't know, like just pick. And they've played. They might die right away, but they played.
I look forward to it.
Cool. Enjoy.
Thank you so much for listening to the Board Game Community Show. This was a dream come true to get to know Chris. He really was one of the first people to kind of introduce me to the world of board game design and the board game community, because that's kind of how I ended up getting into the community, was through the design route. And it was so fun to just get to know him. It's trippy. It's trippy to me because I spent so many hours listening to him and chatting, and it was just a lot of fun. He's such an easy guy to get along with. We recorded after this episode. We continued to talk and talked on the Board Game Workshop, which was also really cool. I'm excited to hear that when it comes out. It should be his next episode that comes out here in a week or 2 or 3. I'm not exactly sure, but I will let you know. If you follow me on Twitter @RiledNerd, I will definitely be retweeting it out. A side project that I have started working on is there were the bonus episodes where we did a 4-part playing through the B&B game, the TTRPG of Borderlands. And that was a lot of fun. And now the full game has come out and we have started recording. We finished 2 sessions and they are all edited at this point. I'm waiting on the art that we'll use for the cover, for the podcast cover. And I'm really excited about that. Tarquin from this adventure continues on, played by Phil still. And Matt continues playing, but he is playing a new character, and my wife joins us, and then my friend Kyle, who did the music for the last one, also joins us. And it has been so much fun, hilarious. I've been cry laughing editing it. I am so excited to share it with everybody. So yeah, be on the lookout for that. That is all I've got. If you enjoy the podcast, leave a review, tell your friends, spread the word, and follow me on Twitter @RiledNerd. And that is it. Until next week, keep nerding out.
Okay, so like you heard in the episode, I played Hero Quest as a kid. One of my favorite games with my 2 brothers. We didn't have a lot of table space, so we'd often play on the floor, as kids do. And if you're familiar with Hero Quest, it has got a ton of little plastic miniatures with their axes and their swords. So we're playing and whatever. young boys not being nice to each other, probably. And one of my brothers falls on the board. He got stabbed by a lot of things. The elf snapped at the ankles, because the elf is rather weakly designed. The barbarian's sword bent very poorly, but the dwarf is solid. The dwarf did not break at all. And I just thought that was so perfect for their character design. That the dwarf just got fell on by a person. Is like, no, I'm fine. Just stab you in the side. It's amusing. I still remember. It's been like, I don't know, 27 years, 28 years maybe now. Yeah, great time.